let's go to chapter 1. Now, before we get into chapter 1, we have to set a little bit of groundwork because the book is about Maskil Psalms. There are 150 Psalms altogether. Now, of these 150 Psalms, there are only 13 of them which are considered Maskil Psalms. You can tell they're Maskil Psalms because it has Maskell in the heading. Okay, it's real simple to find. However, the word Maskell means to comprehend or to understand. Now, I can tell you Smith's Bible Dictionary calls them wisdom psalms, but there's something about these psalms which beg for you to take a moment and think about what the author is actually trying to say. Now, with the Maskil Psalms, there are probably 10 of them that are attributable to David. There are some which are not attributable to David. You can tell they're not David's because the way when you read them. But there are some which are directly attributable to him, and then there's some that are questionable. So I've taken the ones that definitely are, and some of the ones that are questionable, and arranged them chronologically. Now, this is important too, because if you were to study literature, and you were to study Byron or Keats or whatever poem that you're reading, you would know that if you found out a little bit more about Byron personally, or Keats or Yeats or whoever, if you found out more about them personally, you would understand what they were writing. So the same thing with the Psalms, all right? If you know that David wrote them, it would be a lot more beneficial to know a little bit more about David. And so what I've done is I've arranged them chronologically in order, and then each chapter not only has the psalm that we're focusing on, but some history about David. And so that way you can see the psalm through David's eyes. And then you can see David through the filter of the Psalms, and you can understand what was going on with him by what he wrote. So we take those two things, and then we look at, okay, that's good for back then, but what about 21st century Christianity? Well, we take it and we fit it into the New Testament, because you'd be surprised how many times these Psalms are quoted in the New Testament. And then we take whatever that is in the New Testament and we apply it to today's problems. You know what? Lots of times when you look at what was going on with the life of David, you'll see the incredible guilt that he was carrying, or you'll see the grief that he had. And we look at what is it about the grief that allows us to learn from it. We say, okay, this is what God's plan was. This is how we apply it to us. And that's the way each one of these chapters is set out. It has 4 sections according to that. And so we look at each psalm and what it is to say, and we look at the importance of it. Now you may say, okay, why aren't the Psalms important? But when you look at it, 1, they are quoted in the New Testament a lot. 2, Jesus quoted them a lot. You realize there are 7 sayings that we have recorded that Jesus said while he was hanging on the cross. 2 of them are direct quotes of the Psalms. Now, we don't know whether he was singing them or whether he was just quoting them. But either way, there was a message behind these Psalms that we need to know. And so we see them being used not only by Jesus or Paul or Peter or James or any other New Testament writer. We see them being used again. And so we know that they have this staying power over time. And then we look at today and we see that they still have staying power for us today. One of the things that I like to point out, this is something which is not it's not often thought of. But one of the important things is how we know song is so important is even at the Last Supper, it's recorded before they went to the Mount of Olives. After supper was over, they sang a song, and then they went out into the night. Do you know what that song is? Well, I can tell you. there's a group of Psalms called the Hallel, in which the last one, which they would be sung in order, and the last one is Psalms 118. And you look at Psalms 118, and you look at the verses in it, and it says verses like, God is for me, who can be against me? Can you imagine Jesus singing that with his disciples? What it would mean to him? One of the verses in it is, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Can you imagine Jesus singing that on his way to the Mount of Olives? That's why these songs are so important, because whenever he got to Golgotha, it was both excruciating agony, but also the joy of fulfilling what God wanted. And that sounds strange because we don't see how there could be any joy in it. But you know, when he was resurrected, it would just be overflowing. Now, what does that mean for us today? Why do we have these Psalms? We don't have to worry about being hung on a cross. However, we are given these Psalms for two reasons, probably many more, but two of the reasons is that they're given to us for wisdom, so that we can know what God is wanting to tell us. Because God's wisdom is much higher than ours. And sometimes we just have to take him at his word. The second one is weaponry. It is our sword. It is what we use in spiritual warfare. It is what we use in just life's struggles. Our obligation is to study the word, because that's how God speaks to us. He speaks to us through his word. So we have a duty to study the word and to meditate on it. And not only to study and meditate, we have an obligation to open our eyes, open our hearts, and be ready to listen to what God has to say. And just like that teenager that wants to talk and not listen, we can do the same thing with God. And he can tell us what he wants to know, and we don't listen. You may ask why songs are important. They're important because there's something about songs which connect with the soul. We don't know what that is, but songs help us whenever we need to memorize something. They help us whenever we're enduring pain. And it's one of the lasting memories that we have. You know, they have found with Alzheimer's patients that they may forget everything, but they can still remember a song from their youth. And you can start singing it, and they will join in with you. I was always amazed at how my kids, by the age of 3, could memorize the books of the Bible because they could sing the song. The songs give us the ability to communicate in a melody and a harmony. But not only to communicate with a melody and a harmony, they give us the ability to communicate with emotions and with understanding. We can comprehend whatever is being sung and the message being sent. What are your favorite songs or hymns from church that mean something to you, that connect with you in some way? And there's usually no trouble getting a list from everybody. And it's not so much the songs that are on there, is that they recognize there are certain songs that they connect with emotionally and that mean something to them. So when you go through your repertoire of what songs that you have as a favorite church song, think about it and realize that, you know, that song means something to me because, and whatever it is. Because when it connects with that psalm, God has connected with your soul, and when you sing it, you connect with God. So in chapter 2, we'll get into the Maskil Psalms. We'll leave the introduction behind and we'll get into the Psalms. And the first Psalm is going to be Psalms 142. And it has to deal with loneliness.